The lake was quiet that evening, the kind of quiet that wraps itself around you like a blanket. Ethan leaned against the wooden frame of his porch, watching as the fading sun turned the water gold. This cabin had always been his sanctuary, a place where the noise of the city couldn't touch him. But tonight wasn't just about peace. Tonight, his little retreat had become a meeting ground for something bigger. Inside, the fire crackled, filling the cabin with warmth. At the oak table sat a tall man in a dark suit, his posture upright, his gaze steady, the state attorney general himself. Ethan still found it surreal. He never thought someone of such importance would be sitting in his humble cabin, sipping coffee from the same mismatched mugs he used every morning. Yet here they were, discussing reforms that could change the state's future. The Attorney General placed a map of the lake on the table. "These waters," he said, "are at the center of more disputes than you'd believe. And if we don't handle them right, families like yours will keep paying the price." Ethan nodded, listening carefully. He felt the weight of the moment, but also a sense of pride. His little cabin had become a safe place for real conversations. What he didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that trouble was already marching straight toward his door. Across the neighborhood, one woman noticed everything. Karen. To her, being head of the HOA wasn't just a title. It was power. She relished walking the streets with her clipboard, telling people their lawns were too long, their curtains the wrong shade, their mailboxes not community approved. She thrived on control, and most neighbors didn't dare to cross her. Except Ethan. He had ignored her fines. He had laughed off her warnings. And worst of all, he had stood his ground when she tried to intimidate him. Karen hated that. She hated him. So when she noticed cars parked outside his cabin and lights glowing long after dusk, suspicion filled her like wildfire. She muttered under her breath as she stomped down the path toward his property. Unauthorized gathering. Probably a party. Breaking rules again. Not under my watch. The sound of her heels on the dirt was sharp, fast, determined. She wasn't just coming to check, she was coming to catch. Inside, Ethan was in mid-conversation when the door flew open with a loud bang. Karen stood in the doorway, flashlight in hand, her face twisted into that familiar look of self-importance. Ethan jolted upright. The Attorney General paused mid-sentence, turning slowly to face the unexpected guest. Karen's eyes darted around the cabin. Papers spread across the table. Coffee mugs steaming. A man she didn't recognize sitting across from Ethan. Her suspicion only deepened. Well, she sneered. What's going on here? Unauthorized meeting? Violation of HOA rules? Ethan's jaw clenched. Karen, this is my property. You can't just... She cut him off, wagging a finger. Don't lecture me about rules, Ethan. You've been breaking them since day one. And now this? Hosting strangers? Having secret meetings? The Attorney General said nothing yet. He simply turned his head, his sharp gaze resting on Karen. The silence made her fidget, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I guarantee half of you have dealt with these neighborhood dictators before. Karen took a bold step into the cabin, planting herself firmly as if she owned the place. I'm the head of this HO. Nothing happens here without my approval. Ethan let out a breathy laugh. Your approval? Karen, this is my cabin. But Karen wasn't listening. She had locked eyes with the Attorney General, assuming he was just another neighbor she could scare. And who exactly are you? She demanded. The man spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, deliberate. I might ask you the same question. You walked into a private meeting without knocking. Karen smirked. Private? There's no such thing around here. Not when the HOA is responsible for maintaining order. The Attorney General leaned back slightly, folding his hands. His expression didn't change, but the room seemed to shift around his presence. And do you often enforce your so-called order by trespassing into people's homes? Karen faltered. For the first time, her words stumbled. I have every right. I'm responsible for this neighborhood. Ethan glanced at her, then at his guest. He could see it. Karen didn't realize who she was dealing with. Karen tried to recover, her voice growing shrill. You don't know what Ethan's like. He never follows the rules. I've had to fine him, warn him, babysit him like a child. Someone has to keep people like him in check. The Attorney General calmly reached into his briefcase and placed a thick folder on the table. He opened it with careful precision, spreading the papers so Karen could see. Inside were letters, complaints, and official documents. He looked directly at her. Funny you should say that. Because we've been gathering testimony about this HOA. Stories of harassment, misuse of funds, threats disguised as rules. Karen's face went pale. That's ridiculous. Was people exaggerating? The Attorney General didn't flinch. No. Tonight you proved them right. You walked into a home without permission. You declared yourself above everyone else. And you think rules only apply when you enforce them. Ethan sat in stunned silence. He hadn't expected this. His quiet meeting had suddenly turned into the unmasking of the neighborhood tyrant. Karen's voice cracked as she tried to fight back. This is a setup. Ethan put you up to this. He's been plotting against me for years. Ethan finally spoke, his voice steady. Karen, nobody plotted anything. This is about you. Families here are tired of your fines. Your threats. The way you treat people like property instead of neighbors. Tonight you just showed everyone who you really are. Karen shook her head violently. No. You can't do this. You have no proof. The Attorney General's aide, who had been quietly standing in the corner, stepped forward. Without a word, he handed Karen an envelope. She looked down at it, her hands trembling as she opened it. Inside was a formal summons. Her eyes widened. Her lips trembled. You can't. This can't be happening. The Attorney General's voice was firm. It already is. Karen spun on her heel, storming out of the cabin. The door slammed so hard the walls rattled. For the first time, Ethan saw her not as a queen of control, but as someone cornered, powerless. The cabin grew quiet again. Only the fire filled the silence with its crackle. Ethan let out a long breath, running a hand through his hair. Well, he muttered, that was something. The Attorney General allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes the loudest voices crumble the fastest when the truth finally arrives. Ethan chuckled softly, though the adrenaline was still pumping through him. I never thought my cabin would be the stage for all that. The Attorney General looked at him with calm assurance. Justice shows up where it's needed. Tonight it happened to be here. Outside, the moon shone across the lake, steady and peaceful, as though it had been watching everything. The storm had passed, leaving the night calm once again. Ethan realized something then. His cabin wasn't just a retreat anymore. Tonight, it had been the place where truth broke through arrogance. The HOA would never be the same. And neither would Karen.